we're going to start with the disassembly, and I'll show you piece by piece how this guy was put together and how we get to where it is in its complete state. Right, let's start with the railings. So here we have the railings, guys, and these are the two side ones that come on the sides, and these are the ones on the front. I just use simple 12 millimeter square tubing and MIG welder, and what I've also done is use some flat bar for the foot pieces, as you can see here, and they're basically all at exact right angles. This is 45 degrees, 45 degrees, this is horizontal, and then these are at 45 degrees, obviously reciprocal from there. And simple. This part alone probably took me about, let's say, about 3 hours at the most. That's excluding spray painting and so on. So yeah, this was rather simple enough. Next up, we're going to take the sides. This is the right hand side. Basically what I've done is, as you've seen, I've taken the railings as they were on the side of the vehicle, and I've taken duct tape and a wide piece of duct tape and plastered that over the holes for the cross members for the existing roof rack that comes with the vehicle. And all I did is I marked the holes out on the duct tape, took the duct tape off nicely, got a piece of rectangular tubing. The duct tape was just more or less the same width, and I put that across here, and I took a punch and punched the holes. As you can see, I've only punched 5 holes. I'm using 3, but these ones are closed up. That's now if I'm really going to go the extra mile and put something extra on, then I'll put these screws on as well. But I think the bolts that bolt into the railing itself is quite powerful, and I think they'll be able to handle the punch. Also the tolerances that I made this to are very fine. The reason for that is the moment you have movement, when you're driving on a gravel road or something like that, and the vehicle starts shaking, you're going to have issues with loose parts fitting together, rattling, and basically driving you nuts. So I've built the tolerances for the cross members that bolt onto these are tight. They fit on just very snug, and the bolts going into here, I'll show you what the bolt setup is just now. And yeah, so these are the sides. The other side is just reciprocal from this. So all I did is I took this one, made the holes, and then what I did is I measured from the sides, from this side to here, and from this side to here, and from this side to here, each side. I flipped it over and took that same measurements and put them over on this side. The reason I do that is I don't have a drill, standing drill. I have to do it by hand on a normal battery operated drill. And if I drill from both sides, I know my holes are exactly lined up, and I know I won't have a problem with alignment later on. What I did is to close up the bottom end. All I did is I measured, well, before I cut this, I measured 25 mil or 15 mil longer than what I should, and then I turned it around, cut the inner parts to the exact length I need, and cut the sides, cut the box sides off, and only left the bottom lip. Then I bent the lip over and welded it shut, and if you can see, it actually came out very nicely. The holes are unfortunately not that pretty, but I'm a do-it-yourselfer, so it doesn't have to be exquisitely beautiful. That part you won't even see. Alright, now the cross members. I'm only going to show you one because they're all exactly the same, save for the first one and the last one. The reason I say that is this is number 6. What I've done is I've numbered everything, and I've punched the designations onto each part here, so that I know exactly which goes where just by looking at it. On here I've punched a series of dots which indicates an R and an up arrow, so I know this is the right hand side, and if I can read it, then that's the way it must mount. So I can read R upright, this goes on the right hand side, exactly like this of the vehicle. The other one will say L and up, that will mean the reciprocal of this, and that goes on this side, and I mount that in. So when this gets put together, this goes first, your sides go first, they mount onto the railings as they are on the vehicle, and then you start taking the cross members, and then you put the cross members from the front to back. And what I did is, this one is number 6, I punched out number 6. So I know this is the last one, and the way I know which way is up or down is if I can read the 6 from the top down, then that's the direction it should be in. If it's the wrong way around, that 6 will be upside down. That's not the way it must go. I must be able to read the 6. The same with the 5, same with the 4, all the way up to number 1. And there's 6 cross members. And then the center ones I've divided, I've given a little bit more space between them because I want to, with PVC pipe, make a U shape that can go in there that I can store water in. But that's a project for a different time. But I knew I wanted that, so I made that little gap extra bit bigger for the size pipe that I'm going to be using. Right, so this is number 6, and now with these guys, they are also numbered in the same fashion. So this one is number 6. I don't know if it's visible, but there's a 6 punched out onto here. And if I can read the 6, the same as I can read the 6 like this, then I know this is the way it must go up. The holes line up exactly, and this is where this guy goes on. So this is my railing to prevent stuff from falling off on this side. The same with the sides for these guys. On the inside, the same as like it is punched on the sides. This one is the right hand side one, because I can see the R and I can read the R upright. That means this R is upright too. That means this guy goes on like this. You can't go any other way. If you can't see the R, it's the wrong way around. If the R is upside down, it's the wrong way around. So I've made it like so that anybody can be able to take this guy apart and put it back together again in exactly the same fashion it needs to be. Alright, now let's get to the bolts. What I've done is I've put them all together, makes it easier, so when I need to assemble it, I know everything is together in this Ziploc bag. Let me just take these out. What I've also done here is just for my own recognizance, drawn up a sheet which shows what the layouts are, shows where those are, just for in case in future, I shouldn't, but for in case in future, maybe a long way down the road I forget how it was put together. Then I have this goes in there. I've also got eye bolts. The eye bolts go on the corners, and the eye bolts will tighten on the long arms, on the side arms where these guys go on, like that. The eye bolt will fasten it. So there will be an eye sticking out here like that. That eye bolt is to help tie stuff down to the top, and especially if you've got one of those cargo net, bungee cord cargo net types that you can pull over, then you have an eye to hook that onto. Now they go on the corners of the long arms, so that means you'll have 4, and then in the center of the short arms, of the cross members here, I'll have one running across like that, sticking out the side, so that there's going to be 2 here, 1 here, and you'll be able to put anything through. Because I have this little guy in the center here, I can use this to tighten something down or pull it down. So I only need it on the corners and on the sides. All these other nuts and bolts, this lot here is for the cross members. So there's 2 each side, and as you can see, what I've done is this was actually, I thought to use Teflon or something similar to that, but I couldn't find anything cheap enough and sufficient for me to be able to put it on, and it must seal, it mustn't let the water come through to the inside of the square tubing. So what I've done is, this is tap washers, rubber tap washers. and they're dirt cheap. There's like 17 rand for 9 of them. I just bought a whole lot of them, and every nut and bolt on this thing closes and seals with one of these rubbers at the bottom and at the top. By the way, these are the bolts. They are 8mm bolts. The length of them is 60mm, this length, and they are to hold the sides to the fixed railing. So they will go through these holes here. So they don't need nuts on the end. As you can see, these guys also have lock nuts. The reason I put the lock nuts on is because obviously this vehicle is going to be going through ruts and bouncing and all that stuff, and the lock nuts will just prevent the nut, even if it loosens a little bit, from completely loosening and have this thing damaging the vehicle or causing injury or so on. So yeah guys, this is the basic setup. As you've seen on the outside, there's not that much to it. It's very simple, it's modular, and what's nice about this is mild steel. If I want to weld a bracket on here, I take the paint off and I weld a bracket on there. No mess, no fuss. It's all simple and easy to use. No worries. The last thing we're going to talk about is paintwork. Now that is quite a hectic subject to discuss, and that was probably the most pricey part of this whole setup. So hey guys, this is the railing, the fixed one that comes with the vehicle. This is what the roof rack attached to, and what I've done is I'll show you on the inside. You can see those studded holes that's on there. They've already got bolts in them. I've just prepped them because I wanted it to seal so that there's no water ingress into there. But the roof rack basically will mount onto those bolts. Those bolts come off, you put the sides of the roof rack on, and you bolt it to it. And that's that. There's nothing standing out, there's no attachments to be made or put onto the roof. It's all already there. And when I do the review, we'll have a look and see how it progressed. So guys, when it comes to painting, you apply certain basic principles and your paintwork will last, and it will work the way it was intended. But you can't be lazy. If you're going to be lazy doing your paintwork, it's going to show, and it's something that can't be, half measures can't be taken. So principle for what I've done here, the metal as I bought it was still in very good condition. There wasn't very much rust on it and so forth. And obviously if you have rust on it, good idea will to get de-rust or dioxidine. Dioxidine will dissolve the rust and also in a way clean the metal, but you have to do it in a good environment where you know that when you've cleaned that off, you clean the soapy water off with soapy water, then you know there's no sea air, there's no atmospheric conditions that will affect it and have it rust. So after that, or if you were lucky enough like me, there wasn't really much rust on it to begin with, I use a grinder with a flappy disc on it, and I run over the entire surface of the whole piece of material that I'd like to paint. And what that does is that just cleans off any excess dirt. After I've done that, then acetone. The reason I use acetone, some guys, the professional guys, will probably say, no, you have to use this, you have to use this. And yes, I know I should probably be using the right materials, but this is at a budget. I don't have the type of money to be able to buy the expensive stuff. Acetone is the easiest thing for me to be able to use to clean off the metal and clean off all the dirt that I know should not be on there for the paintwork to work. And acetone is nice because it evaporates almost immediately. It's just a bit of hassle on your hands and so on. You should use gloves. Sometimes it's not practical. You can't have a feel for the cloth to wipe and so on. So that's up to you. Safety is up to you. If you work with it a lot, then it's probably wise to use gloves. But if you're only going to use it once in a while and you have one project so every now and then you should be safe. Right, that takes care of the acetone. Then there's multiple routes you can go primer wise. Right, you've got two primers. I've got normal primer, grey primer, spray mate grey primer. This is not a primer I prefer to use. If you have something that's going to be hard wearing, that needs to be able to handle some punishment, then this is not your guy. This guy I'd use for awnings or so, that stuff that you don't make contact with a lot, something that maybe you've made a bracket for your outside, for your television antenna or so on, that doesn't get worn or touched or used a lot. Then I'd use this primer for static equipment basically. But for equipment that's going to be used a lot, I'm going to use self-etching primer. Self-etching primer basically eats and binds. It's got some type of acid inside here. It eats and binds into the metal, and it creates a much stronger bond with the metal than does a normal primer. This is one that the automotive industry also likes to use, and that's why I like to use it. You can use it on aluminium, bare mild steel and stainless steel. So there's a wide range of uses. The color is just a bit weird. I would have liked a different color, especially if you're going to be painting things black or so on. Then you have to give quite a lot of thin layers first to hide this before you can go on to your final layers and so on. And then I use spray paint, normal spray paint. You can use Rust-Oleum, you can use any product you want, but for me in this area, this is the cheapest spray paint to get to. And the primer, I do two layers. I do first layer, a light layer just to cover it, and then the second layer will be a little bit more intensive, and my coverage will be much greater. And then I'll start after that. In between layers, I leave about 10 minutes for this. And when I change from primer to color, I leave about half an hour to an hour to make sure that the primer binds properly and the air helps to circulate and keep it from binding properly. Then I use the spray paint. I also leave about 10 minutes between layers on the spray paint. And then before I use it, and this is something I do, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right or that it actually works, but I don't use the equipment for quite some time. I actually leave it in the sun some days and so on, and leave it so that the sun actually bakes the paintwork into it. And I don't know if it works, it's just my logic spinning there. And I find it to actually bind the materials properly. The sun, the UV rays, I think actually makes the material bind better. You'll see on the paintwork it actually can take a lot more punishment. So yeah, that's it on the paint. Guys, if there's any questions, if you'd like to message me on details about measurements and so on, let me know. I'll send them to you. It's really not that difficult. Problem is with the measurements on the sides, the part that goes on the existing mounts, that you're going to have to play with yourself. The duct tape trick is something I tried, and luckily it worked. The holes lined up perfectly, or not perfectly, they were imperfect, but I compensated for that. And now it fits beautifully. I'm going to have a review on this roof rack. We're planning a trip up to parents-in-law, and we'll be loading some stuff on here, and then we'll see what it does, if there were any rattles, if stuff came loose, and if there were any changes that I should have made or not have made. So yeah guys, until next time, I hope this was insightful and proved to you that it's not that difficult. You can do it yourself. And until next time, Have a good one. Cheers.